protect, detect, and respond and recover are crucial. They are not sufficient, especially with the increasing use of artificial intelligence. Our mindset must change radically to acknowledge that we cannot rely on IT systems alone to protect us from cyber attacks. So enhancing cyber maturity also means investing in people. It's humans who perpetrate ransom attacks, and it's humans who can stop them. Training staff to identify and respond to cyber attacks and rehearsing incident response plans is critical. Humans are both the weakest and strongest links in cybersecurity. This is not something that any nation can do alone. Just as viruses don't respect borders, nor do cyber attacks. International cooperation is therefore essential. Many of the measures you take to address other threats are just as relevant here. Collaborating on joint investigations and law enforcement, sharing intelligence, or creating regional networks. WHO hosted two new global platforms for international dialogue, the Global Initiative on Digital Health and the Global Initiative on AI for Health, a tripartite platform with ITU and WIPO. My thanks again to the Security Council for drawing attention to this very important issue. As you know, your mandate under the UN Charter is to maintain international peace and security. Cybercrime, including ransomware, pose a serious threat to international security. Just as you have used your mandate to adapt resolutions and decisions on matters of physical security, so we ask you to consider using that same mandate to strengthen global cybersecurity and accountability. WHO is committed to supporting all member states to maximize the power of digital technologies for health and to minimize their risks. I thank you, and Mr. President, back to you.
I thank Dr. Ghebreyesus for his briefing, and I now give the floor to Mr. Eduardo Conrad.
Good morning, Mr. President and Your Excellencies. Thank you for having me today. My name is Eduardo Conrado, and I'm the president of Ascension, the third largest healthcare system in the U.S. Ascension is a nonprofit and Catholic healthcare system. We have about 330,000 people, including approximately 33,000 affiliated providers working in our 120 hospitals, 2,000 ambulatory sites of care, and 75 ambulatory surgery centers, which are located in 17 states and the District of Columbia. Each year, we provide care to more than 6 million individuals with over 3 million emergency room visits and perform nearly 600,000 surgeries. Ascension delivers roughly 1 in 50 of the babies born in the United States each year. Just to quantify that, that's between 72 and 78,000 babies annually. Our mission is to serve all with special attention to providing compassionate and comprehensive care to the poor and the vulnerable in the U.S. As you may know, the healthcare sector is particularly vulnerable to cyber and ransomware attacks because of its size, technology dependency, and the sensitive data we secure and maintain. On May 8th of 2024, Ascension became victim of a ransomware attack. The attack encrypted thousands of our computer systems and posed a significant challenge on our ability to serve our patients and our communities. As a direct result of our systems being encrypted, we were not able to access our electronic health records. Several of our other technology systems were also unavailable, including those that the patients use to communicate with their doctors and download their data. The ransomware attack also made it more challenging to access various systems that are used to order and perform certain critical diagnosis tests, labs, MRIs, CT scans, X-rays, and also provided to dispense medicines to our patients. As soon as we discovered the ransomware attack, all healthcare teams initiated downtime procedures, which is a predefined step that all healthcare organizations follow during a system or network failure. One of those steps includes switching to paper records while our electronic records are down. As you can imagine, this placed tremendous burden on our dedicated workforce and clinicians. Let me paint a picture of what it looked like for our staff during that time. Overnight, nurses were unable to quickly look up patient records from the computer stations and had to be forced to come through paper backups for patient medical history and medications. Imaging teams were unable to quickly send the later scans up to surgeons waiting in the operating rooms, and we actually had to rely on runners to deliver printed copies of the scans to the handover surgery teams. As we tried to bring more staff to ease the burden of the nurses, we were hampered because the provisioning system was also offline on it. Due to the malicious attack, our care teams and our patients went from utilizing all the incredible technology they use every day to working off of paper, faxes, and hand delivery. In short, our modern care system was sent back in time. During the attack, several of our hospitals were also forced to go on diversion for emergency medical service, which means that ambulances were diverted to other hospitals and emergency rooms instead of Ascension hospitals. The impact of diversion can vary, but it can lead to delayed services due to increased travel times and could lead to poor outcome to patients. It can also create a ripple effect where receiving hospitals are overburdened and also forced to divert patients. In addition to diverting ambulances, out of caution, some non-emergent elective procedures, tests, and appointments were temporarily paused while we worked on bringing the electronic systems back online. Modern healthcare relies on many third-party digital solutions. We found that bringing the systems back online and convincing each of these hundreds of vendors to reconnect to Ascension was a monumental task. It took until June 14th, 37 days after the ransom attack was launched, for us to restore connection and access to all of our electronic health records and bring our last hospital back online. Today, we continue to deal with the fallout of the attack. Now that our electronic health systems are back and operational, we have a lengthy process of digitizing the data from all the paper patient records that were created and collected over those 37 days that we were down. Just to put it in perspective on the amount of paper, if you were to stack the papers one on top of another, they would reach 1.5 kilometers high on it. So it's gonna take us probably till the end of this calendar year to be able to digitize those paper records, and that's 6 months after our systems were operational again. While I have preliminary focus on the impact of ransomware attack on our systems and services, I want to emphasize the tremendous human impact of such attacks. Our providers and staff rose to the incredible challenges from technology limitations and disruptive workflows to help provide patients the safe and effective care they needed. They did this while taking longer hours, increased stress, and in some cases, increased burnout. In addition, when patients were diverted and sought treatment in other healthcare facilities, the providers and staff of those facilities also had to shoulder additional burden due to increased patient volumes, limited access to our health records, and increased stress. We recognize the work that they took, and then also want to thank those providers for their willingness and efforts to do so. Our organization is just one of many healthcare entities targeted by cyber criminals every day. Unlike many smaller healthcare organizations that might not have as many resources as Ascension, we were fortunate to be able to quickly engage internal and external cybersecurity experts and legal counsel to investigate, contain the issue, and secure our systems. We also work closely with the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency in responding to the attack. Even still, the financial impact from May 2024 ransomware was tremendous for Ascension. Ascension has spent approximately $130 million in the response to the attack, and we lost $900 million in operating revenue at the end of our fiscal year. Ascension is not alone in experiencing significant financial impact from cyber attacks. Recent estimates suggest that the cumulative downtime costs, recovery efforts, and lost revenue for U.S. healthcare organizations has reached over $70 billion since 2019, almost $15 billion through October of this year. Ransomware attacks on healthcare systems have been increasing, with 386 healthcare cyber attacks reported thus far in 2024 in the United States, according to the U.S. Health and Human Services. And our incredible technology and cybersecurity teams inside of Ascension stop attempts to attack our systems nearly on a daily basis. Ransomware attacks on healthcare sector are more than cyber threats. They can pose a direct and systematic risk to global public health and security. These attacks are not driven by rogue individuals, but by professional cyber criminals who are highly skilled and well-resourced. International coordination and cooperation are needed to fight against ransomware attacks and safeguard healthcare systems worldwide. Madam or Mr. President and Your Excellencies, we appreciate the Security Council's interest in protecting our healthcare system and ultimately our patients and communities. Thank you for this time this morning.
I thank Mr. Conrado for his briefing, and I now give the floor to those council members who wish to make statements. I give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. My name is Ann Neuberger, and since 2021, I've had the privilege of coordinating the United States national security policy on cyber and emerging technologies. I'm honored to represent President Biden today to speak about the threat of ransomware. Thank you to the United Kingdom for devoting part of your Security Council presidency to this session and for your continued leadership on promoting responsible state behavior in cyberspace. Thank you as well to WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus, President of Ascension Healthcare, Eduardo Conrado, for joining us. We appreciate the expertise and insights of your briefings. Today I want to talk to you about three topics. First, the nature of the threat posed by ransomware attacks, particularly to healthcare systems. Second, what the United States is doing to address this threat, both globally and at home. And finally, the critical role every state can and must play in confronting this challenge. The reality is that ransomware attacks on hospitals and healthcare systems are a serious threat to international peace and security. They jeopardize lives. They destabilize societies. The Security Council, therefore, has a role to play in countering this threat to peace and in spurring countries to action. Just a few months ago at the Security Council's high-level debate on evolving threats in cyberspace, convened by the Republic of Korea, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called on us to reflect on the immense benefits that digital technologies bring to our societies. However, as the Secretary General cautioned, this same connectivity that brings us together also exposes countries around the world to significant cyber threats. Ransomware is one of the most pervasive and damaging of these threats. The US government is aware of over 1,500 ransomware-related incidents in 2023 alone, generating over $1.1 billion in ransom payments. This is a significant increase from 2022, when we saw a little more than half that much in ransomware payments. Indeed, the 2023 figure is a 10 times increase since 2018 and a 100 times increase since 2014. And the United States isn't alone. In July 2023, the port of Nagoya, Japan's business shipping port, was hit with a ransomware attack by a group Lockbit, which forced the port to stop handling a large portion of incoming shipping containers. That same year, a ransomware attack against the Pathology Partnership in the UK led to significant risk to the national blood supply. And South Africa's National Health Laboratory Service suffered a ransomware attack affecting the dissemination of lab results, hampering national efforts to respond to an outbreak of Mpox. According to the US intelligence community June 2024 analysis, 51% of global ransomware attacks in the first half of this year were against US victims. The remaining 49% are spread all across the world. This is truly a global threat. Healthcare and emergency services is one of the top 4 most targeted sectors for ransomware attacks, with at least 191 incidents worldwide in the first half of this year alone. In the United States, our Federal Bureau of Investigation reported 249 reports of ransomware incidents against the healthcare sector last year. What does a ransomware attack mean for a hospital? As we just heard from the briefing, it means ambulances diverted and other delays in emergency care, cancellation of surgeries, delays to important medical treatments, and breaches of extremely sensitive healthcare records. When directed at blood banks, ransomware attacks can prevent access to life-saving supplies. Ransomware targeting these facilities can result in major disruptions that jeopardize patient care and access to medications, increase the length of patient stays, force the transfer of patients to other facilities, and cost lives. I want to re-emphasize that last sentence. Health experts have estimated that ransomware attacks were responsible for the deaths of dozens of patients in the United States. Medicare systems between 2016 and 2021. More recent data confirms that mortality rates at hospitals increased when a hospital has been disrupted by cyber attacks. So what are we doing about this dangerous crime spree? We start from the premise that there's strength in numbers. We're not alone in facing this threat, and we're not alone in wanting to uphold international norms that prohibit all aspects of this behavior. It was this belief that we could be more than the sum of our parts that inspired us in 2021 to launch the 68-member International Counter-Ransomware Initiative, which includes a number of states who are around the table with me here today. This initiative focuses on disrupting ransomware attacks, enhancing the security of critical infrastructure, and increasing the capacity and incident response capabilities of partners together. We're also using our own law enforcement capabilities to disrupt these crime waves. And to make ransomware attacks less appealing, we're working closely with cyber insurers and the private sector to reduce ransomware payments and improve incident reporting. We've also pledged, along with 40 other states, not to allow our governments or any of their agencies to pay ransomware bounties. Beyond reducing ransom payments, we're engaged with public and private sector entities to halt the illicit flow of extorted ransomware payments made in cryptocurrency that's laundered through virtual asset service providers. And looking into the future, our International Development Agency, USAID, is working to establish a fund to build long-term cybersecurity capabilities against ransomware attacks and to help countries respond to and recover from ransomware attacks. But none of us is doing enough. Ransomware attacks will continue, and perpetrators will thrive as long as ransoms are being paid and criminals can evade capture, particularly by fleeing across borders. Which brings me to my third and final topic. What can and should every country be doing to end this cycle of victimhood, plunder, and impunity? And why should the Security Council, with its unique mandate, support efforts to tackle this evolving threat to peace and security? Ransomware attacks are attractive to cybercriminals because of the large individual ransom payments. For a group like Black Cat, which received more than $420 million in ransom payments since 2019, this is a thriving business. In fact, last year, Black Cat and Lockbit accounted for more than 30% of claimed healthcare ransomware attacks worldwide. And in 2024, among other attacks, Lockbit claimed credit for a cyber attack on Croatia's largest hospital and published confidential data on patients stolen from a French hospital system. First, every state should act in accordance with the Framework for Responsible State Behavior in Cyberspace, endorsed by the UN General Assembly repeatedly and by consensus. By affirming this framework, we have already made commitments to address malicious cyber activities emanating from our territories. Under the framework, states should not knowingly allow their territory to be used for internationally wrongful acts using information and communications technologies, and they should respond to appropriate requests to mitigate malicious ICT activity emanating from their territory aimed at the critical infrastructure of another state. So when ransomware attackers in one state target critical infrastructure like hospitals in another, it is incumbent on the first state to take action to investigate and mitigate that activity in line with the framework's norms, especially when they've been asked to do so. Yet some states, most notably Russia, continue to allow ransomware actors to operate from their territory with impunity, even after they've been asked to rein it in. The developer and administrator of the cybercriminal gang Lockbit is Russian national Dmitry Khoroshev, whom our Department of Justice has charged for committing hacking crimes. We assess cybercriminals affiliated with the most impactful ransomware variants, like the one which committed the attack against Ascension Healthcare, are tied to Russia, based on member citizenship, geographic location, claimed allegiance, or association with known Russian cyber actors. Some money launderers for these top ransomware actors are Russia-based and utilize Russian banks or cryptocurrency exchanges to launder their ill-gotten gains. In 2021, President Biden met with President Putin and asked that he rein in ransomware attacks on U.S. targets. President Biden made clear in this meeting that when a ransomware operation is coming from Russian soil, even when it's not sponsored by the state, the U.S. expects the Russian government to act. Instead of adhering to its UN commitments, Russia continues to harbor these criminals. The United States implores states not to follow Russia's practice in protecting international cyber criminals and reiterates our request for states to follow the framework for responsible state behavior in cyberspace as a matter of upholding international peace and security. We issue today a call to action. Countries that experience a ransomware attack against a hospital should inform the country of origin of the attack and request that they take action in line with their UN commitments regarding responsible state behavior in cyberspace. In conclusion, we can collectively eradicate this scourge if we act together, abide by our shared principles, refuse to pay criminal gangs, and help each other apprehend the cyber criminals who think they can outmaneuver our system. I thank you for your attention and look forward to continued and expanded cooperation in the days and months ahead.
I thank the representative of the United States for their statement, and I give the floor to the representative of France.
Monsieur le Président, je voudrais
Mr.
tout d'abord
President,
remercier
I'd
le
like to
directeur
begin by
général de
thanking
l'Organisation
the
mondiale de
Director
la Santé,
General of the WHO, Mr. Tedros Ghebreyesus,
Monsieur Eduardo
and
Conrad,
Mr.
pour
Eduardo
leurs exposés
Conrado for
qui
their
mettent
briefings.
clairement en lumière
They
les
have
enjeux de la
clearly shed
réunion du
light
Conseil de sécurité
on
aujourd'hui.
the reasons for today's Security
En juin
Council
dernier,
meeting. Last
À
June,
l'initiative de la présidence
at the Welcome
sud-coréenne,
Initiative under
le Conseil de
the South
sécurité
Korean
avait tenu un débat
presidency, the
ouvert
Security
sur
Council
l'évolution
held
des
an
menaces
open debate
cyber.
on the development of cyber
De nombreux
threats.
États avaient souligné
A number of
l'impact
states
grandissant sur la
underscored the
paix et la
growing
sécurité
impact on
internationale
international peace and
des usages
security
malveillants
resulting
des
from
technologies de
the
l'information et de la
misuse of
communication.
ICT.
Parmi les menaces les plus
Among
sévères
the most
figurent les
severe
attaques
threats
par rançon
are
logiciel.
ransomware attacks.
La menace des rançongiciels
Ransomware
croître
threats continue to
s'aggraver.
grow and to worsen.
En 2023,
In
nous avons constaté en
2023,
France
in
une
France,
hausse de
we saw
30%
a
de ce type
30%
d'attaques par rapport à l'année
increase in these
précédente.
types of attacks over the previous
Cette
year.
croissance est favorisée par
This
l'accessibilité
growth
sur le marché
is prompted by
codes
access
sources
to the market
et
of
d'outils
source
d'intrusion
codes
cyber
and cyber
qui
intrusion
permettent à de
tools,
multiples
which
acteurs
enable
criminels
numerous
d'entreprendre
criminal
ces
actors
cyberattaques.
to carry out cyber attacks.
Animés par des motivations
Driven
financières,
by financial
du temps,
motives,
les attaques par rançongiciel
these
ont un
ransomware
impact
attacks
sur
have an
les individus
impact
et
on
les entreprises,
individuals and on
mais
companies,
aussi sur le
but
fonctionnement
also
même
on the very
services publics
operation
essentiels
of essential
donc
public
sur la
services
stabilité des
and
États.
hence on the stability of states.
10% des attaques par
10%
rançongiciel
of
recensées par les
ransomware
autorités
attacks
françaises
identified by
2023
French authorities in
visaient des établissements de
2023
santé
targeted healthcare
avec de graves
establishments.
conséquences sur la délivrance de soins
This had
vitaux.
serious consequences on the
De
delivery of
nombreuses
vital
attaques
care.
visaient des
Many
entreprises de secteurs
attacks also
stratégiques, des
targeted
établissements de recherche,
enterprises
des
in
établissements d'enseignement
strategic
supérieur
sectors such as
et des
research
administrations
institutes,
publiques.
higher education institutions, and ministries.
Nous le savons, les attaques par
We know
rançongiciel
that
peuvent contribuer au
these ransomware attacks
financement de la
can be
prolifération
used
d'armes
to
de destruction
finance the
massive.
proliferation in weapons of
Le
mass
dernier rapport du
destruction.
groupe d'experts
The
du
most
comité
recent report of the panel
17-18
of experts under the
indiquait que les programmes
17-18
nucléaires
committee
et
pointed
balistiques
out
illégaux de la
that
Corée du Nord
the illegal
seraient
North
financés
Korean
à hauteur de
nuclear and
40%
ballistic
au moyen de
programs
ces
could be
activités
financed up
cybercriminelles.
to 40% through these
Monsieur le Président,
cyber criminal
pour répondre à ces
activities.
menaces,
Mr.
il
President,
importe
in
en
order
premier
to
lieu
counter
de
these
rappeler notre
threats,
attachement
it's
aux
important
normes
first and
qui
foremost to
garantissent la
recall
sécurité
our attachment
et la
to the
stabilité
norms
du
guaranteeing
cyberespace.
security and stability in
Comme l'a affirmé
cyberspace.
l'Assemblée générale à de nombreuses
As the
reprises,
General Assembly
le
has
droit
reaffirmed on a
international,
number of
y compris la
occasions,
Charte des
international
Nations
law,
Unies,
including
s'applique
the UN
au
Charter,
cyberespace.
apply to cyberspace.
Les États ont défini par consensus
States have
un ensemble de
defined
normes
by
de comportement
consensus a
responsables
series
des États
of
dans le
norms of
cyberespace
responsible
afin
behaviors for
d'améliorer
states
la
in
prévention
cyberspace in
et la
order to
gestion des
improve the
incidents
prevention
cyber.
and the management of cyber incidents.
Ce cadre normatif
This
enjoint les
normative
États à
framework
prendre toutes les
urges
mesures
states to
raisonnables
take
pour
all
empêcher
reasonable
que leur
measures
territoire ne
to
soit
prevent
utilisé
their
par des
territory
acteurs
from
cyber
being
malveillants
used by
pour commettre
malicious
des
cyber
faits
actors
internationalement
to commit
illicites.
internationally illicit acts.
La France continuera de soutenir à l'Assemblée
In
générale
the
les
General
travaux visant
Assembly,
à
France will
promouvoir ce
continue to
cadre
support
normatif,
work aimed at promoting
à en
this
préciser
normative
une
framework
compréhension
and in
commune
defining a
et à
common
appuyer les États
understanding,
dans sa mise
as well as in
en œuvre.
supporting states in
La
implementing
France participera activement
that
dans
framework.
l'année qui vient à la
France
poursuite des
will
échanges sur
participate
l'établissement d'un
actively in the
mécanisme
coming
permanent
year
de
in
programme d'action
discussions on establishing a program
ces
of
objectifs.
action standing body to meet
La
these
France
goals.
soutient et
France
participe à
supports and
l'initiative
participates in
internationale de
the
lutte contre
international
les
initiative to
rançongiciels
combat
lancée par les États-Unis
ransomware
en 2021.
launched by the United States in
Cette
2021.
initiative permet de favoriser
This
l'échange
initiative
de bonnes pratiques
promotes an
afin de
exchange
faire
of good
émerger une
practices
réponse
so that we can craft
collective
a
au risque
collective
que représentent
response
les
to the risk
rançongiciels pour
of
nos sociétés
ransomware
et nos démocraties.
facing our societies and our
Monsieur le
democracies.
Président,
Mr.
comme l'ont souligné
President,
de nombreux États lors du débat ouvert
as a
organisé
number
en
of states
juin
pointed
dernier
out
sous
during
présidence
the open
sud-coréenne,
debate
le Conseil de
held in
sécurité doit aussi,
June
dans
under
le cadre
the
de son
South
mandat,
Korean
se
presidency, the
saisir
Security
davantage
Council, within the
des
framework
enjeux
of
de
its
cybersécurité.
mandate, must also
Des
better
réunions comme celle
understand
d'aujourd'hui
these
permettent au
cybersecurity
Conseil de se
threats.
tenir informé
Meetings such
des
as the one
évolutions
we
du
are having
paysage de la
today
menace
enable the
cyber.
Council to keep abreast
La
of
France reste
the
prête à
changing
travailler
cyber
pour
threat
améliorer la prise en
landscape.
compte des enjeux
France
cyber
stands ready
dans les
to
travaux
continue
des
to
organes
work
subsidiaires du Conseil,
in
en particulier en ce qui concerne le
improving the
contournement des
understanding
régimes de
in this
sanctions.
council of the cyber challenges as well as in the
I thank
work
the
of the
representative of
subsidiary
France for their
bodies of this
statements,
council,
and I
in
give the floor
particular
to the
when it comes to
representative of Japan.
thwarting sanctions regimes. Thank you. I give the floor to the representative of
At the
Japan.
outset, I thank President for convening this meeting upon request from 7 Council members, including Japan. I also appreciate today's briefers for their insights. It is significant that Security Council is continuing to address threats posed by cyber attacks following the meetings it held in April and June. Today, we are witnessing increased risk of cyber attacks through ever more sophisticated means. There is an upward trend of cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructures, including ransomware attacks against healthcare facilities. The 2021 GGE report pointed out that complex and sophisticated uses of ICT capabilities undermine trust and potentially escalatory and can threaten international peace and security. The report also refers to the risks and consequences of malicious ICT activities during the COVID-19 pandemic. Japan has been continuously collaborating with Oxford University in examining legal aspects of these issues through the Oxford process and the report published last year on cyber operations against healthcare sector. Vulnerabilities in ICT constitute a risk factor for the whole world. No country can deal with this threat alone, and we need to work together with a sense of urgency. President, ransomware is one of the most disruptive cyber threats, undermining the operations of critical infrastructure in society, including hospitals and power plants. Given the overall impacts and ramification, ransomware could certainly pose direct threat to international peace and security. Some Japanese hospitals have also experienced major impediments to their emergency patient care and scheduled surgeries caused by ransomware attacks. Preventing ransomware attack and, in case of attack, minimizing social and economic disruption are of utmost importance. For these purposes, Japan values information sharing and close cooperation among member states authorities, including law enforcement agencies, raising awareness for potential targets of ransomware attacks, enhancing security, cybersecurity resilience, and capacity building. In this vein, developing collective resilience continues to be essential for preventing various actors from exploiting vulnerability to ransomware attacks. Japan values and appreciates US-led counter-ransomware initiative and shares its firm commitment to working together at both policy and operational levels to counter ransomware threats. Promoting capacity building programs to strengthen cybersecurity is also essential to ensure the safety and resilience of cyber infrastructure. To this end, Japan has been providing capacity building support in Indo-Pacific countries and will continue to do so in collaboration with like-minded countries, international organizations, industry, and academia. President, Japan reiterates the importance of the rule of law in cyberspace. Under the UN framework, we have been engaging in concrete discussion on the application of existing international law and implementing agreed norms, rules, and principles of responsible state behavior. While we have agreed that existing international law applies to cyber operations, we have also discovered that there is no agreement on the key issues, including violation of sovereignty and application of the due diligence principle. In order to maintain peace and security while relying on cross-border data flows through internet, we must seek to strike an appropriate balance between the free flow of data and territorial sovereignty as soon as possible. In our view, the current lack of agreement on these issues is not conducive to the maintenance of international peace and security. Therefore, we need to redouble our efforts in search for common ground on the application of existing international law. For this purpose, the Security Council could also play a role. It might be difficult for the Council to determine the existence of a threat to international peace and security from a single cyber incident. But considering the worrying trend of increase in the malicious cyber operations like ransomware attacks on the healthcare sector, the Security Council might be able to determine that certain trends of malicious cyber operations pose a threat to international peace and security. President, as we continue our work, Japan looks forward to contributing to the upcoming sessions of OEWG. Japan also believes the program of action should serve as a future permanent platform to ensure a seamless transition from OEWG after 2025. Lastly, Japan will continue to make efforts to fight against cyber threats and to pursue a free, fair, and secure cyberspace. I thank you, President.
I thank the representative of Japan for their statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Malta.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I also thank Dr. Ghebreyesus and Mr. Conrado for their insightful remarks. The evolution of ransomware tactics represents a severe escalation in the cybersecurity threat landscape. These attacks have become increasingly damaging, making recovery without succumbing to the demands of malign actors more challenging. This is why Malta joined the call for this meeting today. The World Health Organization has identified ransomware as the primary digital threat to healthcare, a situation worsened by COVID-19-driven digital transformation. These attacks do not only jeopardize access to essential medical services, they also violate the fundamental right of privacy of the individual and threaten the overall well-being and security of citizens and their fundamental human rights. The OEWG's annual progress report highlights the growing concern among states regarding ransomware, noting the increased frequency and severity of these attacks. The rise of ransomware as a service has broadened the range of malicious actors involved. The report underscores the necessity for a comprehensive approach to counter the ransomware threat, which includes targeting the illicit financing of these activities. During the Security Council's high-level debate on cyber threats during the ROK presidency in June, several delegations recognized the potential of ransomware to destabilize governments and disrupt essential public services. They also underscored the increasing intensity of ransomware and state-sponsored cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure. These concerns were also underlined in the final report of the panel of experts, which reported on investigations of 58 suspected cyber attacks between 2017 and 2023, valued at approximately $3 billion. Reportedly, these helped the DPRK circumvent sanctions and continue to develop weapons of mass destruction. Malta acknowledges the rapidly evolving nature of technology-driven threats and emphasizes the need for a comprehensive response. It is vital for member states to ensure that the IT workforce, particularly in healthcare, possesses up-to-date cybersecurity skills. Additionally, raising awareness at the executive level about the potential of cyber attacks to serve as a public health emergencies is crucial. Investment in human capital, the establishment of robust incident response processes, and training clinical staff to maintain service quality during cyber attacks are essential. Developing strong communication pathways within healthcare entities for coordinated responses, potentially across borders, is also important. National efforts alone can only go so far. They must be complemented by international cooperation, also to ensure adherence to international law. Cross-border ransomware attacks pose increasing risks to public health, with implications that extend far beyond mere technical disruptions. The availability of ransomware online has lowered the barriers for attacks, including transnational organized crime groups, making it easier for malicious actors to launch their operations globally. Mr. President, gender mainstreaming in cyber norm implementation and gender-sensitive capacity building are needed. Women's involvement and participation in cyber decision-making is crucial, especially in conflict and post-conflict contexts. Ensuring gender responsiveness in our cybersecurity strategies is essential for developing comprehensive and effective solutions. In closing, Mr. President, we look forward to continuing our discussions on cybersecurity and commend efforts made to highlight the vital role of the Security Council. We reaffirm our support for a program of action guided by the UN. We believe that the agreed framework for responsible state behavior in cyberspace is essential for fulfilling our shared responsibilities and aligning our common interests. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Malta for their statement, and I give the floor to the representative of the Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Mr. President. I extend my gratitude to WHO Director General and Mr. Conrad for their valuable insights. The Republic of Korea welcomes this timely meeting on ransomware, one of the most significant types of cyber attacks. We are encouraged by the ongoing momentum in cybersecurity discussions at the Security Council this year, building upon the ARIA formula meeting in April and the signature event open debate in June, chaired by the Republic of Korea during its Security Council presidency. Throughout these meetings, many countries emphasized that alongside other types of cyber threats, ransomware has emerged as a critical challenge to international peace and security. Numerous countries have consistently emphasized the need for the Security Council to tackle cyber threats in accordance with its primary responsibility conferred by the UN Charter. In this regard, I'd like to highlight the following points. First, malicious cyber activities, including ransomware, act as threat multipliers, exacerbating existing challenges and amplifying conflicts. They disrupt essential social or public services, which can trigger social instability and undermine national security. In Ukraine, a number of cyber attacks on critical infrastructure like power grids and telecommunication systems are causing wide blackouts and network disruptions. They not only caused humanitarian sufferings, but also further escalated the war. Second, cyber attacks seriously undermine the Security Council's sanctions regime. For example, According to the annual report by the panel of experts for the DPRK Sanctions Committee, the DPRK generates approximately 50% of its foreign currency revenue through malicious cyber activities. This clearly underscores how cyber attacks have become a primary tool to circumvent and nullify Security Council sanctions. Furthermore, sanctioned armed groups are leveraging illegal cyber activities to raise funds, conceal assets, and trade weapons, complicating the enforcement of asset freeze and arms embargoes. Third, such illegal revenue is linked to WMD proliferation, which falls under the direct purview of the Security Council. Indeed, the DPRK is funding 40% of its illegal WMD and missile development programs through malicious cyber activities, as the latest panel of experts report pointed out. Last week, the DPRK launched a series of ballistic missiles, including a new type ICBM. Needless to say, North Korean IT workers have also been engaging in serious crimes, such as the theft of intellectual property from numerous global defense firms with the aim of advancing its WMD capabilities. Mr. President, to cope with imminent threats posed by cyber attacks, including ransomware, we believe it is urgent to enhance the role of the Security Council and strengthen international cooperation. At the Security Council level, we should consider requesting regular reports from the Secretary General on evolving cyber threats to mainstream cybersecurity into the Council's agenda and hold regular Security Council meetings like other agenda items. In the mid to long term, we can take actions to pursue accountability in the Security Council in addressing cyber activities that violate international law and harm international peace and security. As for the need for international cooperation, we want to stress that cyber threats are global, as evidenced by the recent incidents in Costa Rica and Trinidad and Tobago that took place over the last few years, where ransomware attacks led to declarations of national emergencies. The Republic of Korea also continues to be exposed to cyber attacks. As recently as this week, there was a DDoS attack on the Ministry of National Defense. My government announced a few hours ago that cyber attacks by pro-Russian hacking groups have increased following North Korea's troop deployment to Russia. Given the transnational nature of cyberspace, our cybersecurity is only as strong as its weakest link. Therefore, international cooperation and capacity building, particularly with the developing countries, are crucial in responding to cyber threats. To that end, my government is now participating in the counter-ransomware initiative led by the US, which aims to enhance global awareness and build collective resilience against ransomware. Mr. President, the Republic of Korea strongly believes that Security Council, in order to remain relevant, should pay more attention to the threats emanating from emerging technologies like cyber and AI. Along with our ongoing efforts like the adoption of GA resolution on AI in the military domain at the First Committee this week and the 2024 REAIM Summit in Seoul, the Republic of Korea will continue to play its own part at the Security Council. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the Republic of Korea for their statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Slovenia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to thank Director General Dr. Ghebreyesus and Mr. Conrado for their valuable contributions to today's briefing. Mr. President, Slovenia is a member of the Counter-Ransomware Initiative. It is in this capacity that we would like first to draw the attention to the latest annual progress report from the UN Open-Ended Working Group on Security of and the Use of Information and Communications Technologies. In the report, the UN member states expressed concern over the increasing scale and severity of ransomware attacks that disrupt essential services, including the healthcare sector, which is particularly dangerous and worrisome. Member states also highlighted that such attacks may have an impact on international peace and security and require a comprehensive response. Our position on cyber-related discussions in this chamber continue to be guided by the Council's primary responsibility to maintain international peace and security. Due to the very unique character of cyberspace, the issue is international and only seldom confined by national borders. It is thus a problem that can only be solved with a high degree of international cooperation. To fulfill this responsibility, the Council must actively engage in addressing the threats posed by ransomware attacks, including on hospitals and other healthcare facilities and services. Mr. President, following the COVID-19 pandemic and the rapid digital transformation of healthcare organizations globally, ransomware attacks have increasingly targeted these entities. State and non-state actors are incentivized to exploit critical healthcare IT systems or compromise the confidentiality of personal data and data concerning health. In many instances, non-state actors are sheltered or even facilitated by the government. Ransomware attacks on health facilities and institutions create a direct threat to public health, safety, and security. Because of such attacks, diagnostic imaging, pathology, emergency departments, ambulance services, and cancer care have all been consistently disrupted. This is not a victimless crime. Human lives are endangered. The impacts of these attacks have, of course, been also financial, with a ransomware attack on one member state's healthcare system estimated to have cost around $100 million. This money can be used to fund other crimes and potentially even terrorism. Mr. President, given the rapid development of AI, which has further accelerated the conduct of ransomware attacks, allowing both state and non-state actors to carry out such attacks without requiring high technological skills, a decisive response by the international community is needed to prevent and mitigate their impact. Capacity building, particularly on a technical level, is fundamental to increase cyber resilience. In this vein, Slovenia co-founded the Regional Cyber Capacity Train-the-Trainer Center in the Western Balkans, which has been successfully executing Western Balkans regional trainings for the last year and a half. As the majority of the crimes of ransomware attacks are cross-border in nature, the Council should play a decisive role in de-escalating tensions and promoting accountability, especially when such attacks endanger the security and even lives. We also believe that the Council could consider designating cyber criminals for listings under the sanctions regimes. Mr. President, allow me to conclude by assuring you of our unwavering commitment to collaborate with Council members and the broader UN membership in continuing discussions on ransomware threats that are of shared concern to international peace and security. We also remain steadfast in our commitment to continue to implement measures aimed at mitigating these risks, including by implementing the existing norms of responsible state behavior in cyberspace. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Slovenia for their statement, and I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Господин председатель,
Mr. President,
благодарим
we
генерального
would like
директора
to thank
ВОЗ
the Director General of
за
the
его брифинг.
WHO for his
Внимательно
briefing,
выслушали
and
президента
we listened to
некоммерческой
the
организации
President of the NGO
Эдуарда
Ascension, Eduardo Conrado.
Всем членам международного
All members
сообщества
of the
прекрасно
international
известно о
community
том
are
внимании,
acutely
которое
aware of the
Российская Федерация
attention that the
уделяет
Russian
вопросам
Federation pays
безопасности в сфере
to
использования
information and communication
информационно-коммуникационных технологий.
technology security.
Именно наша
It
страна
was
более
our
четверти
country
века назад
that a
стала
quarter of a century
инициатором
ago
дискуссий на этот
initiated
счет в ООНовской
discussions
системе.
on this within the UN.
Россия стояла
Russia
за
was
идеями
behind the
создания в
idea of
рамках ООН
establishing within
профильных
the
переговорных
UN
форматов,
specialized
в том числе и
negotiation
успешно
formats,
функционирующей в
including
настоящее
the
время
current
рабочей группы ООН
successful
открытого состава.
open-ended working group.
По нашей
On our
инициативе
initiative,
была также
we
запущена
also
работа спецкомитета
launched the
по
ad
выработке
hoc committee
всеобъемлющей
to
конвенции
draft a
ООН
comprehensive UN
о
convention
противодействии
on
использованию ИКТ
countering
в
the use of
преступных целях,
ICTs for
который
criminal
в августе этого
purposes.
года
In August this
успешно
year,
согласовал проект данного документа.
this document draft was
В условиях
successfully agreed
наличия
upon. There
инклюзивных
are many
тематических
inclusive
механизмов для
thematic
обсуждения вопросов
mechanisms to
информационной
discuss
безопасности,
issues pertaining
в
to
том числе
information
всего
security,
спектра
including on
существующих
a
и
broad
потенциальных
range
угроз в
of
данной
existing and
области.
potential threats in this
Для
area.
нас так и остается
Therefore,
неясно,
it is still not clear to
чем же
us
продиктована
what
необходимость переноса
prompted
этой дискуссии
bringing
еще и на
this
площадку
discussion
Совета
to
Безопасности.
the Security Council as
Не
well.
услышали мы конкретного
And
ответа на
we
этот
have not
вопрос
heard a
сегодня.
specific response to this question today either.
Более того, учитывая,
Furthermore, given
что
that
сегодняшнее
today's
мероприятие было
meeting
запрошено
was
весьма сжатые
requested in a
сроки,
short time frame,
из выступления его
these
инициаторов мы
statements
так
of
и не
its
смогли понять, в
initiators
чем же
still did
заключается
not make it
немедленная
clear to
и
us
конкретная
what
угроза
constitutes
международному
the
миру и
imminent
безопасности.
specific threat posed to
Ведь
international peace
именно
and
эти
security.
ситуации
It is
Совет
precisely
Безопасности
such
должен рассматривать
situations
в
that the Security
приоритетном
Council
порядке,
must
исходя из
consider
своего мандата.
as a priority based on its mandate.
С учетом фокуса
Given the
сегодняшнего
focus
заседания
of
на
today's
проблематике
meeting on
вирусовымогателей,
ransomware,
хотели бы
we would
отметить,
like to
что
point out
борьбой
that
с использованием
countering
данного
the
вида
use of this
вредоносного программного
form of
обеспечения наравне с
malware,
другими,
as well as other
не менее
types
серьезными для
of
общественной и личной
crimes
безопасности
which
видами
use
преступлений с
ICTs and
использованием
which
ИКТ,
are no less
как раз
serious
и призвано
for public and
заниматься
personal
упомянутой
safety,
мной Конвенцией
should
о
indeed be
борьбе с
addressed
формой
by the
преступности.
Convention Against Cybercrime.
Призываем всех коллег
We would urge
сосредоточиться на
all
на
colleagues to
содействии
focus on
скорейшему
ensuring the
вступлению в
swift
силу
entry into
этого
force
важного
of this
прикладного
important
международного договора.
practical international agreement.
Кроме того, уже сейчас в условиях
Furthermore,
постоянного расширения
even now
спектра
with
угроз в
the
сфере
constant
киберкриминала,
increase in the number of
стоит
threats
задуматься о дальнейшем
in the
развитии
area of
Конвенции
cybercrime,
путем принятия
thought should be given
дополнительных
to
протоколов.
further developing the convention
Что
by
касается
adopting
обеспечения
additional
защиты
protocols to
критической
it as regards
инфраструктуры, в том числе
protecting critical
медицинских объектов,
infrastructure,
от
including
злонамеренного
healthcare
воздействия с
facilities,
использованием
from
ИКТ,
malicious use of
то Россия
ICTs,
прекрасно
Russia
осведомлена о
is fully
подобных рисках.
versed in such risks.
Наша страна
Our
регулярно
country is
сталкивается с
regularly
компьютерными
subject
атаками
to
на
cyber
учреждения
attacks on
здравоохранения.
healthcare facilities.
С начала
From the beginning of
2022 года неоднократно
2022,
фиксировались
we have
инциденты
repeatedly
различного
seen
характера и
incidents of
масштаба,
various size
от
and
похищения
scale,
персональных данных
from
пациентов,
stealing
выведения из строя
patients' personal
томографов,
data and
до
disabling
взлома
CAT
сайтов детских
scans,
больниц.
to causing sites of
Во
children's
многих
hospitals
случаях
to crash. In many
ответственность за
cases,
подобные
responsibility
нападения
for
несут
such attacks
украинские
are
группировки, в
borne
частности,
by
курируемые
Ukrainian
НАТО
groups, and in particular
IT-армией
the
Украины.
NATO-overseen IT army of Ukraine.
Хотим напомнить,
I'd
что
like to
консенсусное
remind you
понимание
that
о
the
необходимости
consensus
обеспечения
understanding on the
безопасности
need to
объектов,
ensure the
оказывающих
security
жизненно
of
важные услуги
facilities
населению,
providing vital services
неоднократно
to the
подтверждались
population
в рамках
has
групп
been repeatedly
правительственных
reiterated
экспертов
within
ИРГОС по
the
международной информационной
GGE
безопасности.
and the
Там же были
OEWG on
выработаны
ICT
соответствующие
security. The relevant norms were developed there.
Убеждены,
We
что
are
наибольший
convinced
вклад в
that the best
укрепление
contribution
безопасности
to
критической
bolstering the
инфраструктуры
security
не
of
слабая
critical infrastructure
кодификация
would be made by
соответствующей
codifying
договоренности,
the
которые
relevant
на
agreements
сегодняшний
which
день носят
today
добровольный
are
и
voluntary and
необязательный характер.
non-binding in nature.
В этих целях выступаем
To
за
this end,
скорейшую
we are
разработку
in favor
международного
of a
правового
swift
инструмента,
drafting
который
of an
охватывал бы все
international legal
аспекты
instrument that would
обеспечения
cover all
безопасности в сфере
aspects of
использования ИКТ.
ICT security.
Наиболее
The most
подходящей
appropriate
площадкой для
forum
усилия
for
на данном
efforts in this
направлении стал бы
area would
постоянный
be
переговорный
permanent
механизм под
negotiation
эгидой ООН,
mechanism under the auspices
который
of
будет
the UN.
учрежден по
This would be
окончании мандата
established at the end of the
нынешнего ВОЗ в
mandate of the current
2025 году.
OEWG in
Слово буквально
2025.
позавчера в
Just
Первом
the day
комитете
before
Генеральной
yesterday,
Ассамблеи
indeed,
был
the
принят
first committee of the GA
консенсусом
adopted by
внесенный Сингапуром
consensus
проект
a
резолюции,
Singapore
который закрепил
draft
данный
resolution that enshrined this agreement.
Господин председатель,
Mr.
возвращаясь к
President,
нашим
coming back
сомнениям
to our
насчет
doubts
добавленной
regarding
стоимости
the added
сегодняшнего заседания,
value of
считаем
today's
важным
meeting, we
помнить и
believe
о
it's
том,
important to
что
recall
рассмотрение в
that
Совете
considerations
Безопасности
in
ООН
the UN
вопросов
Security Council of
злонамеренного
the
использования
malicious use
ИКТ,
of ICT,
особенно если дело
especially
касается
if
конкретных
this
эпизодов,
pertains to specific
осложняется
incidents, is
специфическими
complicated
характеристиками
by the
информационного
specific
пространства.
characteristics of cyberspace.
Речь идет
We're
прежде
talking
всего о его
primarily
анонимности,
about its
которая делает
anonymity.
практически
This
невозможным
makes it practically
достоверное
impossible
установление
to
источника
reliably
вредоносной
establish the
деятельности.
source of the malicious
На этом
activity.
фоне крайне
Given this,
неконструктивны и
it
даже
is not
опасны
at
любые
all
попытки
constructive and
прибегать
even
к так
dangerous to
называемой
attempt
политической
to
атрибуции,
embrace the so-called
под
political
которой, по сути, скрывается
attribution.
банальное
This
стремление
essentially
оставить за собой право
hides
выдвигать
the
безосновательные и
hackneyed desire
политизированные
to
обвинения в адрес
to
неугодных
put
государств.
forward unfounded and politicized
Разумеется, не предъявляя
accusations
при этом
against
никаких
unfavorable
доказательств.
states, and of course without providing any evidence
Увы, сегодняшнее
whatsoever.
заседание исключением не стало.
And today's meeting was no exception to this
США вновь
rule.
решили
The US
воспользоваться
once
площадкой Совет
decided to
Безопасности
use the
в
Security
продвижении
Council
своего
to put
оторванного
forward
от реальности
its
нарратива.
unrealistic narrative.
Рассуждения о так называемых
The
российских
discussions
хакерах
about
и
the so-called
инсинуации
Russian
насчет якобы
hackers and the
поощряемой нашей
incidents
страной
that apparently our
вредоносной
country
деятельности в сфере
is
использования
pushing
ИКТ уже
forward
давно звучат
malware
как
in
анекдот,
ICTs is
вызывая у
something that
любого
seems to have turned into
здравомыслящего
an
человека
anecdote
решение.
now because any sensible person
Тем
can
не
just
менее,
reject
Вашингтон
this.
упорно продолжает
Nonetheless,
прибегать к
Washington
подобной
is
риторике,
stubbornly
видимо, апеллируя в
continuing to
основном к
use such
внутренней аудитории.
rhetoric to push for its
Даже в
own
ходе
domestic agenda.
состоявшихся во вторник
Even
президентских выборов
during
в США
the US general
публичное
elections
пространство
on
периодически
Tuesday,
вбрасывались
the
тезисы о
public
пресловутом
space
российском
said that
вмешательстве.
apparently there was some kind of
И это
Russian
при том, что
interference.
Американское
And
агентство по
this is
кибербезопасности и
when
защите
the
инфраструктуры
US
заявило о
cybercrime
том, что
agency
попыток
stated
какого-то
that
злонамеренного влияния
such
на результаты
malicious
зафиксировано не
acts
было.
were indeed not recorded
Тем не менее,
whatsoever.
Соединенные Штаты и их
Despite this, the
союзники
US and
продолжают
its
активно
allies
пользоваться
continues to
риторикой
actively use
о мнимой
rhetoric
киберугрозе со стороны своих политических
regarding
оппонентов.
cyber threats to its country, their country.
Безосновательность подобных инсинуаций
And
неоднократно
the
разъяснялась с
baseless
нами на
nature
профильных
of
площадках.
such accusations have been
Хотим
repeatedly raised
напомнить,
by
что в рамках
us.
дискуссий
We'd
под
like
эгидой
to remind
Генассамблеи
you that
выработаны
as part of
практические
the
меры по
discussions under
укреплению
the auspices of the
деполитизированного
GA,
сотрудничества
practical
государств-членов ООН
measures have been
в
developed
области
to
информационной
strengthen
безопасности,
depoliticized
в том числе
cooperation
и в
between
отношении
UN member
реагирования на
states in the
компьютерные
area
инциденты.
of information security. This includes responding to cyber
Речь идет
attacks.
в первую
I'm
очередь о
talking
запущенном в
primarily
мае этого
about the
года по
launch in
российской
May this
инициативе
year on
глобальном
Russia's initiative
межправительственном
of
реестре
the Global
контактных пунктов.
Intergovernmental Points of Contact Directory.
Данный механизм
This
нацелен на
directory seeks to
предотвращение и
prevent and
урегулирование
regulate
серьезных
serious
инцидентов в
incidents in
информационном
cyberspace
пространстве,
and
а
also
также снижение
decrease
напряженности кризисных
tensions in
ситуаций.
crisis situations.
В случае
If
серьезного
there is
эпизода
a
злонамеренного
serious
использования
malicious
ИКТ,
ICT
любое
use
государство
incident,
может воспользоваться
any
данным
state
инструментом.
can tap into this
И
instrument.
показательно, что никакие
we've
запросы
seen
по линии
that there
данного
have been
реестра от
no
стран, столь
requests
рьяно обвиняющих
whatsoever
Россию в
through
кибератаках,
this
к нам
against
так и не поступало.
Russia
Это
whatsoever.
лишний раз говорит о том, что
And this
никаких
once again
технических
attests to
доказательств
the fact
подтверждения своих
that there is
изысканий
just
у
no
Соединенных Штатов
evidence
и их союзников.
regarding these distorted reality
При этом сам Вашингтон, не
in the hands
стесняясь,
of the
признает факты
Americans. But
проведения против России
Washington
операций с использованием ИКТ,
nonetheless says that
равно как и
it
наращивание
actually
наступательного потенциала в
has
этой области.
used ICT
Более
against
того,
Russia.
американские
Furthermore,
спецслужбы
the
широко
American
практикуют так
special
называемые операции
services
под чужим флагом.
have
Причем
used
делают это
false
даже
flag
против своих ближайших
operations,
союзников,
and they're doing it even against their
которые столь
close
активно
allies
поддерживают
who
Соединенные
so
Штаты в
actively
продвижении
support
его
the
агрессивных,
US
их
in
агрессивных
pushing
установок.
forward the US's aggressive
Господин
actions.
председатель, с учетом
Mr.
изложенных
President,
соображений
given all
полагаем,
of
что
this, we
сегодняшнее
believe that
заседание
today's
едва ли
meeting
можно
can
назвать
hardly be
рациональным
deemed
расходованием
a
времени и
reasonable
ресурсов
use of
Совета.
the Council's time and
Наша
resources.
дискуссия, по сути,
Our
сводится к
discussion
зачитыванию
in essence
известных
boils
национальных
down
позиций и
to
дублированию
trotting out
работы,
well-known national positions
осуществляемой под эгидой
and
Генассамблеи.
duplicating work conducted under
Если
the
нашим
auspices of the
западным
GA.
коллегам
If
хочется обсудить
our Western
безопасность
colleagues
медицинских
wish to
объектов,
discuss the
то не
security of
кажется ли
healthcare
им, что
facilities,
начать стоило бы
then
не с угроз,
don't they think
исходящих
that
из
they
информационного
shouldn't start
пространства,
with threats
а с
emanating from
согласования в Совете
cyberspace,
Безопасности
but
конкретных
rather
шагов
they
по
should agree in
прекращению
the
атак
Security Council
Израиля
upon
на
specific
больницы в
steps to
секторе
stop the
Газа, в
horrific
результате которых
senseless
гибнут
attacks
тысячи
by
людей.
Israel on hospitals
Пока
in the
такое
Gaza
происходит
Strip,
в реальном мире,
killing thousands of
переключение
people.
внимания СБ
Until
на
that
мир
happens in
виртуальный
the real world,
выглядит
shifting the Security Council
контрпродуктивным и
attention
даже
to the
циничным.
virtual world seems counterproductive and even cynical.
Господин председатель,
Mr.
призываем
President, we
все
would urge
конструктивно
all
настроенные государства
constructive-minded
продолжить
states to
активное
continue
участие в
their active
глобальной дискуссии по
participation in
международной
global
информационной
discussions on
безопасности.
international
Наша
ICT
страна
security.
неизменно
Our
настроена на
country is
продолжение диалога со
unswervingly
всем
focused on
международным
continuing
сообществом
dialogue
в
with the
целях
entire
формирования
international
мирного и
community to
безопасного
establish
информационного пространства,
peaceful
в том числе за счет
and safe
выработки юридически
cyberspace. This
обязывающих
includes by
договоренностей
developing
в этой
legally
области
binding
в
agreements in
рамках
this area
профильных
as part of
инклюзивных механизмов под
relevant
эгидой
inclusive
Генассамблеи.
mechanisms under the auspices of the
Рассчитываем,
GA.
что
We
именно
trust
такое
that
сотрудничество
such
позволит нам
cooperation
всем
will
эффективно
enable
и
all of us
сообща реагировать
effectively and
на
together
любые угрозы
to
в
respond
данной
to any
области.
threats
Благодарю.
in this area. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for their statements, and I give the floor to the representative of China.
President, I thank WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus and Mr. Conrad for their briefings. President, we live in a rapidly changing cyber age.
在充分享受
While fully
网络
enjoying
空
the
间带
development
来
opportunities
的
from
发展机遇的
cyberspace,
同时，也
we
临
are also
复杂
faced
多
with
样的
complex and
网络
diverse
安全挑战。
cybersecurity challenges.
网络攻
Cyber
击、
attacks,
网络犯罪
cybercrime,
和
and
网络
cyber
恐怖主
terrorism
义
are
日益成为
increasingly
全球
becoming
公害。
global menaces,
勒索软件
among
就
which
是其中的一
ransomware
个
is a
突出
prominent
问题。
issue.
勒索软件
The
问
issue
题
of
专业性
ransomware is
强，
highly
技
specialized
术性
and
强，
technical.
本质
It
上
is
是
essentially
网络
a
犯罪问
cyber
题。
crime.
中方并不赞同有
China
关
is
成
not in
员
favor
仓
of
促
the
推
hasty
动安理
push
会
by relevant
讨论
council
这个问
members
题的
to
做法，
discuss the issue at the Security Council,
希望各方
and hopes that
能
all
够在
parties
其他
can
更为
engage
合适
in
的平
more
台
specialized,
开展
practical,
更
and
为专业、
in-depth
务
discussions
实
on other
和
more
深入的讨
appropriate
论。
platforms.
刚才通报人
Just
以
now,
及一些
the
成员在
briefers
发言
and
中
some members
列举了勒
listed
索软件
examples
攻
of
击的事例。
ransomware attacks in their statements.
中方主张，
China
国际社
advocates
会
that the international
从
community
勒索软件
should
产生的源
analyze
头、
and address the
传
issue
播的途
in
径
its multiple dimensions,
变
such
现
as
的
the
渠道
source of ransomware, the
等多个
pathways
维
for
度
their spread,
分析
and
和
the
处理这个
channels
问
for
题。
monetization.
主张各国
And
加强
proposes
信息
that
共享
countries
以
should
及
step
技
up
术、
information
执法
sharing and
司法合
technical
作，
law enforcement and
共
judicial
同努力
cooperation
加
in
以
a
应
joint
对。
effort to respond.
主席，
President,
勒索软件只是
ransomware
众
is
多网
just
络安全
one of
挑
the
战之
many
一。
challenges to
网
cybersecurity.
络钓鱼、
Other
云
types
系
of
统
cyber
入
attacks
侵、
such as
个
phishing,
人数
cloud
据
system
窃取、
intrusion, theft of
分布
personal
式拒
data,
绝服务
and
攻击
DDoS
等
attacks
各种其他类型的网络攻
are
击
also
也
growing
在快速增
rapidly,
多。网络犯罪的手法
with the
更
modus
具多元
operandi
化
of、
系统化。
cybercrime getting more diverse and systematic.
中方主张加
China
强网
stands
络
for
安全治
enhancing
理，维护
cybersecurity
网络
governance
空
and
间的
maintaining
长治久安，
lasting peace and
呼
stability
吁
in
各方从
cyberspace.
以下几个方面
To this
做
end,
出
we
努
call
力：
on all parties to make efforts in the following aspects.
一
First,
是坚定维护
firmly
网络
uphold the
空间的
peaceful
和平
nature
属
of
性，
cyberspace.
反对将网络
Oppose
空间
wrong practices
定义
such
为
as
军事
making
行动疆域，制
defining
定网
cyberspace
络
as
交
a
战规则，
domain for military
构建网
operations,
络军事同盟，
making rules of
将他国
engagement in
关键基础
cyberspace,
设施
building cyber
列
military
为网络
alliances,
打击目
and
标
listing the
等，
critical
错
infrastructure
误
of
做
other
法，
states as targets for cyber strikes,
抵制网络军
and
事化
reject
和
the
网络军备竞
militarization
赛，
of and an arms race
从
in
根本上遏
cyberspace,
制包
so
括
as to
勒索软件在
fundamentally
内的
curb the
进攻性
development
网络技
and
术的发展
proliferation of
及扩
offensive
散。
cyber technologies, including ransomware.
二
Second,
是坚持以联合国为主
uphold the
渠
role
道，
of the UN
在
as the
广
main
泛平等
channel,
参与的基
and on the
础上，
basis of broad and
制
equal
定各方普
participation,
遍接受的
formulate
网络
international
空间
rules on
国际规则，
cyberspace generally acceptable to all
摒
parties.
弃以意识形态
Do
划线的
away
小
with
圈
the
子，
small circles drawn
打造
along
多边、
ideological
透
lines,
明、民
build
主
a
的
multilateral,
全球治理
transparent,
体
and
系，
democratic global
共
governance
同维护
system,
各国的
and
网
jointly
络安全。
safeguard the cybersecurity of all countries.
三是
Third,
坚持通过
adhere
双
to
多边合
bilateral
作，
and multilateral
打击网络
cooperation to
犯罪
combat
和网络恐
cybercrime
怖主
and
义，
cyber terrorism.
对有关非法行为
Comprehensively
开展
combat the
全方位、
entire chains of
全链
relevant
条的打击，
unlawful acts,
进一步健
and
全
further
各国
improve the
执法、
law
司法协
enforcement
助
and
合作机制。
judicial assistance mechanisms of all countries.
在此方面，中
this
方
regard,
欢迎
China
今年8月
welcomes
达成的
the
联合
Convention
国
against
打击网络犯罪
cybercrime
公约。
concluded by the UN in August this year.
四是加大对发展
Fourth,
中国
step
家
up
维护
assistance to
网络安
developing
全能力
countries to
建设
build
的援助，
capacity for maintaining cybersecurity.
积极开展人才培养、
Actively engage
技
in
术创
international
新、
cooperation in areas
预
such
警
as
防
talent
范、
cultivation,
应急响应国
technological
际合作，
innovation, early warning and
补齐全
prevention,
球网
and
络
emergency
安全
response,
短板，
shore up the weak
不让
links
任
in
何一
global
个国家掉队，
cybersecurity, leave no country
不让
behind,
任何一
and
处网
allow
络
no
空
part
间
of
成为
cyberspace to
法
become
外
a
之地。
lawless space.
主席，
President,
网络空间关乎
cyberspace
和
bears
平安
on
全
peace and
与
security
民生福
and
祉。
people's livelihood
中
and
方愿同
well-being.
国际社会
China
一道，
stands ready to work with the
共同
international
探讨
community to
网络
jointly
安全
explore
威胁与
responses
挑战
to
的应对之
cybersecurity
策，
threats and challenges,
为维护
and make
全球
tireless
网络
efforts
空
to
间的
uphold
繁荣与
prosperity
稳
and
定，
stability in the global
构建
cyberspace,
网络空
and
间命
build
运
a
共同
community
体，
with a shared future
做出
in
不懈的努力。
cyberspace.
谢谢主席。
Thank you, President.
I thank the representative of China for their statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Mozambique.
Mr. President, Mozambique commends the UK presidency for bringing to the Council's attention such a timely and critical topic. We are grateful to our distinguished briefers, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, WHO Director General, and Mr. Eduardo Conrado, President of Ascension. Their briefings have been very important and insightful. Mr. President, ransomware has emerged as a preferred tool for cyber criminals and terrorist networks. It is a criminal activity that has especially severe consequences for countries lacking advanced cybersecurity resources. As we have heard from the briefers, the healthcare sector is particularly vulnerable, especially in developing countries. Here, reliance on digital systems for essential services like electronic health records and diagnostics is growing, but often without the necessary security measures in place. In our countries, disruptions like these can be catastrophic, not only threatening patient safety, but also risking human lives. The impact on nations with fewer resources to respond is exponentially greater. In developing countries, ransomware represents a clear and present danger to our national security and to the safety and stability of essential public services, economic resilience, and public trust in governance. Furthermore, cross-border attacks have the potential to exacerbate geopolitical tensions, putting developing countries at risk. Those attacks can cause collateral damage in broader cyber conflicts. Mr. President, emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and quantum computing amplify this threat. They intensify the challenge for countries with limited access to advanced cyber defense capabilities and pushing the world toward a digital arms race. In this connection, developing nations like Mozambique face particular vulnerabilities. These are due to limited cybersecurity infrastructure, underdeveloped regulatory frameworks, and a lack of access to high-quality digital security training. When ransomware attacks disrupt critical sectors, such as healthcare, recovery requires significant financial resources for expert intervention, system upgrades, and at times, ransom payments. For countries with already strained budgets, these demands present a nearly impossible challenge. For these reasons, we believe addressing ransomware in developing countries requires a comprehensive and a tailored strategy. This approach must emphasize, above all, prevention. It must also encompass preparedness and response, including training IT staff, modernizing outdated systems, and establishing robust regulatory policies and partnerships. Preventive measures like regular software updates, network segmentation, zero trust architecture, and employee training on phishing awareness are essential. But these measures often require capacity building support. Mindful of the negative impact that ransomware has on countries' economies, Mozambique has been developing a regulatory framework to tackle this problem and cybercrime in general. As part of these actions, we can highlight the drafting of the cybercrime law, the data protection law, and the cybersecurity law. In addition to the legislative aspects, Mozambique has been implementing mechanisms to strengthen cybersecurity and resilience with emphasis on awareness and training at various levels. On a global level, we call for a focus on creating unified cybersecurity standards and improved enforcement. No country should become a safe haven for cyber criminals. More importantly, we consider a global and robust legal framework is urgent, fully in line with the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter. Mr. President, we hope today's dialogue will serve as a step toward enhanced international cooperation and diplomatic engagement to deter and respond to cyber threats. Strengthening these efforts is critical to safeguarding global peace and security and ensuring that no nation is left behind and unprotected in this digital era. As in other situations that are a threat to international peace and security, we must also join our efforts to make cyberspace secure and resilient. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Mozambique for their statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Switzerland.
Monsieur le Président, je remercie le Dr Tedros, directeur général de l'OMS, ainsi que Monsieur Conrado de leurs contributions détaillées. La Suisse salue que le Conseil de sécurité se penche à nouveau sur le thème important de la cybersécurité. Les menaces dans le cyberespace, en particulier celles émanant d'acteurs étatiques ou tolérées par les États, peuvent menacer la paix et la sécurité internationale, comme le reconnaît le Pacte pour l'avenir. Les nombreuses opportunités que nous offrent les développements dans le domaine des technologies de l'information et de la communication sont incontestables. La diversité des dangers et des acteurs étatiques et non étatiques qui exploitent les vulnérabilités des systèmes pour mener des cyberactions malveillantes est tout aussi connue. Parmi eux, les attaques par rançongiciel contre le système de santé sont une tendance extrêmement inquiétante qui s'accroît globalement depuis 2020. La numérisation du système de santé permet de grands progrès au profit de la population. Sa cyberinfrastructure devient de plus en plus complexe et donc plus coûteuse à sécuriser. La nécessité de rester opérationnel en tout temps accroît la pression tant sur les prestataires de soins eux-mêmes que sur les organismes publics. De telles attaques sont donc un moyen particulièrement perfide de viser l'infrastructure critique et la souveraineté d'un État. Des rapports récents faisant état d'une collaboration entre un groupe parrainé par la République populaire démocratique de Corée et le réseau de ransomware Play soulèvent de sérieuses inquiétudes en matière de sécurité, car cela pourrait conduire à des attaques plus répandues et plus dommageables à l'échelle mondiale. Permettez-moi de souligner trois aspects. Premièrement, nous réitérons que le droit international, notamment la Charte des Nations Unies, les conventions internationales sur les droits de l'homme et en cas de conflit armé, le droit international humanitaire s'applique et doit être respecté aussi dans le cyberespace. En particulier, le principe de diligence raisonnable qui s'est développé sur une longue période et qui, selon la Suisse, fait partie du droit international coutumier, appelle tous les États à ne pas permettre sciemment que leur territoire soit utilisé par des actions contraires aux droits d'autres États. Cela s'applique au monde physique comme au cyberespace. Les États sont invités à faire preuve de la diligence requise pour empêcher les groupes criminels d'utiliser leurs infrastructures TIC et à coopérer au niveau national et international pour entraver les activités de ces groupes. Ce principe est par ailleurs reconnu dans le cadre normatif en faveur d'un comportement responsable des États dans le cyberespace, adopté par consensus. Ces normes exigent en outre des États de ne pas se mener ou soutenir sciemment des opérations cyber contre les infrastructures critiques telles que les services de santé. Deuxièmement, la répression des groupes criminels actifs dans le cyberespace est importante. Des actions de police récentes ont eu un effet considérable sur ces groupes. Mais la répression ne suffit pas à faire disparaître le phénomène. Les États doivent agir et prendre des mesures adéquates pour prévenir les attaques contre leurs infrastructures critiques. Nous attachons une importance toute particulière à renforcer la résilience et le dispositif sécuritaire du secteur des soins dans le domaine de la cybersécurité. Troisièmement, dans ce contexte souvent transnational, nous ne pouvons réussir qu'ensemble. La coopération internationale et le renforcement des capacités dans tous les États doivent être encouragés afin d'accroître la résilience et la sécurité du cyberécosystème mondial. L'initiative Counter Ransomware, dont la Suisse fait partie, est un forum important à cet égard. En outre, les États doivent davantage respecter leurs obligations internationales en matière de demande d'entraide judiciaire afin de permettre des poursuites pénales là où l'auteur est identifié. Au niveau multilatéral, je tiens à souligner l'importance du groupe de travail à composition non limitée sur le progrès de l'information et des télécommunications dans le contexte de la sécurité internationale. L'année prochaine, il sera important que la groupe puisse recommander la création d'un mécanisme unique au sein de l'Assemblée générale pour continuer les travaux en s'appuyant sur l'acquis de ces dernières années. Monsieur le Président, gérer l'incertitude et renforcer l'humanité était le thème posé par la 34e conférence internationale du mouvement de la Croix-Rouge et du Croissant-Rouge. L'une des résolutions adoptées dans ce cadre a souligné l'importance du droit international humanitaire pour protéger la population civile et les biens civils dans le contexte des conflits armés dans l'univers numérique. Le Conseil de sécurité, pour sa part, a également un rôle à jouer. Il doit promouvoir le respect du droit international et la mise en œuvre du cadre normatif en faveur d'un comportement responsable des États dans le cyberespace afin que nos populations puissent bénéficier des vastes opportunités offertes par celui-ci, notamment dans le domaine de la santé. Je vous remercie.
I thank the representative of Switzerland for their statements, and I give the floor to the representative of Algeria.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. في البداية أود أن أشكر دكتور تيدروس على إحاطته القيمة. كما استمعت بعناية إلى السيد كونرادو. سيد الرئيس، إن تزايد هجمات برمجيات الفدية ضد المرافق الطبية يتفاقم بسبب الظهور السريع والتطور الهائل لبرامج القرصنة الإلكترونية والذكاء الاصطناعي، كما تتضاعف المخاطر بسبب غياب المعايير التنظيمية الدولية في هذا المجال. إن التتويج الناجح مؤخرا لاتفاقية الأمم المتحدة لمكافحة استخدام تكنولوجيا المعلومات والاتصالات للأغراض الإجرامية، والذي تشرفت الجزائر بقيادة مفاوضاته، يظهر ما يمكننا تحقيقه من خلال التعاون المتعدد الأطراف الحقيقي لما يكون في إطاره الصحيح. أود الإشارة بداية إلى مبدأين رئيسيين في بالغ الأهمية. أولاً، النهج الحالي للأمن السيبراني بما في ذلك الأمن السيبراني للرعاية الصحية لا يزال يديم تكريس عدم المساواة العالمية ويفاقم نقاط الضعف تجاه التهديدات المعززة بالذكاء الاصطناعي. ثانياً، يجب أن تنبثق الحلول من مسارات متعددة الأطراف شاملة وتحترم سيادة جميع الدول والمساواة في السيادة بينها. بناء على ما سبق، أضحى من الواجب مواجهة 5 تحديات أساسية. أولاً، تحدي الهيمنة التقنية، حيث تحتكر الدول المتقدمة والشركات الخاصة وحتى الأفراد قدرات الأمن السيبراني وتقنيات الذكاء الاصطناعي، تاركة نظم الرعاية الصحية في الدول النامية عرضة للخطر. ثانياً، تحدي العمل الأحادي، حيث أن الهيمنة على الفضاء الإلكتروني وتطوير الذكاء الاصطناعي من خلال الحواجز التكنولوجية تقوض التعاون الدولي. ثالثاً، تحدي التفاوت في الموارد، حيث تكافح الدول النامية لحماية بنيتها التحتية للرعاية الصحية بسبب محدودية الوصول إلى التكنولوجيا والخبرات. رابعاً، تحدي عدم اليقين بشأن الذكاء الاصطناعي، حيث يمكن إساءة استخدام أدوات الذكاء الاصطناعي رغم ما تقدمه من إمكانات هائلة للتنمية والدفاع والأمن، لتعزيز تطور وحجم الهجمات بما في ذلك ضد المرافق الصحية عوض حمايتها. خامساً، تحدي تداخل التهديدات، حيث لا تشكل هجمات برمجيات الفدية المخاطر الوحيدة على البيانات الشخصية، فالمتاجرة الغامضة والمعقدة للبيانات تمثل تهديداً مماثلاً للبيانات الشخصية والحق في حماية خصوصية الأفراد. هذه الأنماط من الهيمنة وعدم الشمول والتفاوت وعدم اليقين والفوضى بشأن الذكاء الاصطناعي تعتبر مترابطة ومتداخلة. السيد الرئيس، في هذا السياق نود التأكيد على 3 تدابير ملموسة. أولاً، إنشاء آليات دولية لنقل التكنولوجيا وبناء القدرات لضمان الوصول الشامل والعادل إلى حلول الأمن السيبراني للمرافق المدنية. ثانياً، تطوير بروتوكولات موحدة لكن قابلة للتكيف للأمن السيبراني تناسب الدول في مراحل التنمية المختلفة، مع الإقرار بأن الحلول أحادية المقاس غير فعالة. ثالثاً، إيجاد وتوفير حلول أمنية ميسورة التكلفة مصممة خصيصاً لتلبية احتياجات نظم الرعاية الصحية في الدول النامية. كما يجب على المجتمع الدولي أن يعطي الأولوية لوضع الأخلاقيات كأولوية في تطوير الذكاء الاصطناعي. علاوة على ذلك، يجب أن نلتزم بالسلامة والقابلية للتحكم، حيث هناك العديد من أوجه عدم اليقين في تطوير وتطبيق التقنيات المتعلقة بالذكاء الاصطناعي. لذا فالسلامة هي خط أحمر، هي الخط الأحمر الذي يجب عدم تجاوزه. كما يحتاج المجتمع الدولي إلى تعزيز الوعي بالمخاطر وإنشاء آليات فعالة للإنذار والاستجابة للمخاطر وضمان عدم حدوث مخاطر خارجة عن السيطرة البشرية. نود أن نؤكد أنه يجب أن يكون نود أن نؤكد أنه يجب أن تكون انشغالات دول الجنوب محورية لا هامشية في أطر الأمن السيبراني والذكاء الاصطناعي الدولية، ولا يتعلق الأمر بالعدالة فحسب بل بالفعالية أيضاً، حيث غالباً ما تواجه الدول النامية تحديات فريدة في مجال الأمن السيبراني في نظمها الصحية، مما يتطلب حلولاً مخصصة لا معايير مفروضة. السيد الرئيس، في الختام يتطلب المضي قدما في هذا المجال إجراءات فورية من جهة وطويلة الأجل من جهة أخرى من خلال عمليات متعددة الأطراف شاملة مثل ما أبرزه نجاح اتفاقية الجريمة السيبرانية ما يمكننا تحقيقه عندما نعمل معا وعلى قدم المساواة. ينبغي أن يتجه العالم نحو مزيد من المساواة التكنولوجية والقدرات المشتركة ومزيد من التعاون المتعدد الأطراف والحد من العمل الأحادي وأقل من الحلول المفروضة ومزيد من النهوض الشاملة ونحو تطوير للذكاء الاصطناعي يخدم البشرية بدلا من تعريضها للخطر. إن سلامة نظامنا الصحية ليست امتيازا للدول الغنية إنه حق أساسي يجب حمايته وتوفيره لجميع الشعوب في جميع الدول. علينا أن نعمل معا لضمان أن لا يصبح التقدم التكنولوجي في مجال الأمن السيبراني للرعاية الصحية والذكاء الاصطناعي عاملا إضافيا في توسيع قوة عدم المساواة العالمية. وشكرا.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Algeria for their statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Sierra Leone.
Thank you, President. I thank Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, Director General World Health Organization, for his informative briefing. And I also thank Mr. Eduardo Conrado, President of Ascension, for the information provided. Sierra Leone has prioritized addressing new and emerging threats to international peace and security in our tenure in the Security Council. And we therefore welcome the opportunity to address this important issue regarding the rising threat of ransomware attacks against hospitals, healthcare facilities and services, with the potency to undermine the fundamental right to health and threatening the global fight against public health crisis. Sierra Leone stands firm in recognizing that cyber attacks, including ransomware attacks, pose a growing challenge to international peace and security, particularly when they target critical infrastructure like healthcare systems. These attacks not only cause widespread disruption, but also put lives at risk, affecting the most vulnerable, particularly in conflict zones, under-resourced settings, and during health emergencies such as pandemics. Whether perpetrated for financial gains and or social political disruption, cyber attack on healthcare systems, especially ransomware, are not only been opportunistic in preying on our reliance on digital health interventions, including internet-connected telemedicine, e-health virtual communication platform, and health system management dashboards, particularly since the COVID-19 pandemic, which ushered in an increased demand on healthcare systems. They also militate against increased access to healthcare and health system strengthening. The reliance on internet-connected and computer-based healthcare systems, which, whilst making healthcare management much more efficient and effective, also increases their vulnerability to cyber attacks by criminal organizations who exploit and profit from these facilities that provide life-saving services but store large volumes of sensitive and personal data. While ransomware attack claims have increased worldwide across all sectors, reports from the World Health Organization, Interpol, and intelligence services of some member states indicate that attacks on the healthcare industry are particularly insidious. Several healthcare cyber attacks have been reported in the first half of 2024. Interpol's 2024 African Cyber Threat Assessment Report said that nearly half of the African countries surveyed reported ransomware attacks against their critical infrastructure, including hospitals. This adds to the report in recent years by several countries of having experienced attacks on their healthcare infrastructure, leading to loss of patient data, disruption of essential health services, and even deaths. These attacks are not just criminal in nature, but represent a clear and present danger to public health, which is intrinsically linked to the international peace and security. In line with the African Union and regional efforts, Sierra Leone strongly supports the need for concerted international approach to combat cybercrime and strengthen the resilience of our health systems. The 2020 African Union Convention on Cybersecurity and Data Protection emphasizes the need for collaboration, capacity building, and knowledge sharing between member states to prevent and respond to cyber threats. Sierra Leone is committed to aligning with this framework and working with the African Union and the wider international community to enhance the cybersecurity capabilities of African states. We must also acknowledge the importance of multilateral engagement in addressing these challenges. The United Nations, through its various bodies, including the Office of Counterterrorism and the International Telecommunication Union, are to play an essential role in providing a platform for cooperation, facilitating technical assistance, and fostering the development of international norms for responsible state behavior in cyberspace. The recent call in the Digital Global Compact to ensure a secure, inclusive, and sustainable digital future must be seen as a critical opportunity to promote global cooperation on cybersecurity. Sierra Leone supports the principles laid out in the Compact, which includes ensuring access to a secure and resilient digital infrastructure, safeguarding critical services, and promoting the responsible use of technology by all actors, including private and non-state actors, who often play a role in these attacks. President, in noting the increasing levels of ransomware attacks on healthcare operations and facilities worldwide, we will highlight three main points. Firstly, Sierra Leone, as already noted, recognizes that ransomware attacks on hospitals and other healthcare operations are a threat to national security, as well as international peace, security, and development. Access to quality healthcare is an essential need for people all over the world, and cyber attacks that disrupt the provision of these services endanger public health, putting the lives and livelihoods of millions of people at risk, and potentially exacerbating insecurity and conflict. There are harrowing accounts of the chaos caused by ransomware attacks across the world in the recent past, and we've had the account of Mr. Conrado. In a world where most tertiary healthcare facilities have become partially or fully digital, loss of these systems severely challenges effective patient care. The implication for global health and security becomes even more higher when we consider attacks on global health institutions and medical research centers that support healthcare services for a large percentage of the world's population and conduct research with biological toxins or infectious agents that could be easily exploited by terrorists and criminal organizations. Secondly, the transboundary nature of cyber attacks, including ransomware attacks, where perpetrators often remain borderless, faceless, and nameless, and victims are spread across geographical lines, requires collaboration and coordination at the international level. At the regional level, we urge for support for the implementation of the African Union cybersecurity initiatives, fostering a regional approach to ensure that the continent's health infrastructure is protected from digital threats. As cyber criminals become more organized, use more sophisticated malware, and conduct more targeted attacks, such as on medical devices as opposed to medical networks and systems, it is imperative that our efforts to combat these threats combine viable and appropriate legislative, intelligence, and law enforcement measures. Strong national level actions must be underpinned by global treaties, laws, and regulations that not only establish norms of conduct, but are backed by meaningful consequences for violators, ensuring that cybersecurity threats targeting hospitals and healthcare facilities are treated as a serious matter of international peace and security, with an emphasis on collective action, accountability, and deterrence. As a member of the International Counter-Ransom Initiative, Sierra Leone remains committed to strengthening our national response system against cybercrime through legislation such as the Cybersecurity and Crime Act, which we enacted in 2021. As a signatory to the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime, we welcome the agreements of the United Nations Convention against Cybercrime by the Ad hoc Committee established by the United Nations General Assembly this past August, which, according to UNODC, is, and I quote, a landmark step as the first multilateral anti-crime treaty in over 20 years and the first UN Convention against cybercrime at a time when threats in cyberspace are growing rapidly. End of quote. Third and finally, the Security Council in recent years has been instrumental in supporting countries and institutions to develop responses to this threat, including through shining a spotlight and increasing the knowledge base of the global community for informed decision-making. Information sharing on threats and perpetrators, as well as the development and use of preventive security measures, including with the private sector as appropriate, are key for the defense of public health and safety. It is also important that the Council ensures adherence to established rules, norms, and principles regulating responsible use of cyberspace. Recognizing that there are significant gaps amongst countries in harnessing the requisite financial, logistical, and human resources capacities to adequately respond to cyber attacks, global and regional collaborative mechanisms must include enhanced cooperation on capacity building, including technology and expertise sharing, especially for small and developing countries, to deepen their understanding of these threats as well as implement measures to counter them. In conclusion, Sierra Leoneans of the firm view that a strong and unified Council's response to the threat posed by ransomware attacks on hospitals and healthcare operations and facilities is key in establishing a peaceful and secure cyberspace. We reiterate our support for initiatives in this regard within the context of established norms and principles for responsible state behavior, human rights, and the fundamental principles of the UN Charter. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Sierra Leone for their statements, and I give the floor to the representative of Guyana.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, I thank WHO Director General Dr. Tedros and Mr. Conrado for their briefings. Mr. President, recent statistics reveal startling increases in the frequency and scale of ransomware attacks worldwide. Attacks against critical infrastructure, particularly hospitals and healthcare facilities, are having serious ramifications for public health and national security. Risks of such attacks are increasing as more health systems globally are using digital transformation to enhance the clinical quality and cost efficiency of their services. With greater access to ransomware and the broadening of threat actors worldwide, we are seeing an increase in the scale of ransomware attacks against medical institutions, negatively impacting their operations and the provision of healthcare services, as well as resulting in the theft of confidential data. In addition to disrupting the delivery of health services and the financial implications due to downtimes, ransomware attacks have in some instances resulted in the loss of lives, where the delivery of urgent medical treatment was compromised. Given its potentially debilitating effects on the stability of national healthcare systems, the development of robust frameworks to counter such attacks must be a priority. States must show greater urgency in adopting a proactive and holistic approach to addressing such attacks, recognizing that it transcends borders and that no country is immune. In this context, I highlight the following points. First, states must invest in capacity building initiatives and develop incident response plans. Many developing countries lack the necessary resources and expertise to protect themselves from and combat cyber threats such as ransomware attacks. As such, building capacities in these countries is critical. This should include technical assistance, funding support, and training to enhance the response capability of vulnerable states, including in the development of incident response plans to deal effectively with these attacks. Second, given the growing magnitude and consequences of ransomware attacks, Guyana underscores the need to foster cooperation between and among states through knowledge sharing on best practices and challenges, information exchanges, and technology transfers. In this regard, it is vital to establish an international information sharing system that provides information to countries on how they can strengthen and protect their critical health infrastructure from being vulnerable to ransomware attacks so that they can be detected and addressed in time. Additionally, a global framework must be developed which caters for this type of intelligence sharing among states and relevant stakeholders on potential cyber threats. Thirdly, The perpetrators of ransomware attacks must be held accountable. Priority must be given to collaboration and partnerships to investigate and prosecute cybercrimes, inclusive of ransomware attacks across countries and regions. This should involve the dismantling of ransomware networks and monitoring of transactions suspected to be ransomware payments. The recently adopted United Nations Convention Against Cybercrime contributes to this effort by providing regulatory and cooperation frameworks to address such crimes. Additionally, Guyana recognizes that international law is applicable to cyberspace. Mr. President, hospitals, healthcare facilities, and services should be treated as sacred, and all efforts must be made to protect them from ransomware attacks. The international community must join forces to prevent all forms of cyber attacks on critical national infrastructure. Guyana remains committed to global initiatives that seek to raise awareness of and address this threat and to ensure that it does not undermine international peace and security. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Guyana for their statements, and I give the floor to the representative of Ecuador.
Gracias, presidente.
Thank you, President.
Y agradezco al director general de la Organización Mundial de la Salud, Tedros Ghebreyesus, por la información muy importante que nos ha proporcionado. Mi delegación ha escuchado y agradece también
has listened closely to and is also grateful to Mr. Eduardo Conrado.
El cibersecuestro de datos contra el sector de la salud no solo pone en riesgo la integridad de los sistemas de salud, sino que directamente amenaza vidas humanas. Al interrumpir servicios críticos y limitar el acceso a servicios médicos esenciales, estos ataques impactan la salud y por lo tanto constituyen una amenaza para la paz y la seguridad internacional. El tercer informe anual sobre los progresos realizados por el Grupo de Trabajo de Composición Abierta sobre la seguridad de las tecnologías de la información, de las comunicaciones y de su uso de julio de 2024 destaca la preocupación cada vez mayor de los estados por la frecuencia, escala y gravedad de estos ataques que van en aumento. Como expresó mi delegación durante el debate abierto celebrado en junio pasado por iniciativa de Corea, el Consejo de Seguridad no debe quedar rezagado ante la evolución de las amenazas en el ciberespacio. Como lo hemos expresado en varias oportunidades, el Ecuador considera a la prevención como la piedra angular de la consolidación de la paz. En esta línea, el Consejo de Seguridad debe incluir en sus productos el fortalecimiento de capacidades sobre el aprovechamiento de las tecnologías y estrategias para combatir su uso malicioso en complemento a los esfuerzos globales. Señor presidente, colegas, si un Estado miembro no está seguro, ninguno lo está. Las amenazas que enfrentamos hoy son, en mayor medida, de naturaleza transnacional y la única forma de contrarrestarlas, tanto en el espacio físico como en el virtual, es a través de la cooperación internacional. La seguridad cibernética es un desafío global que requiere una respuesta integral, coordinada y cooperativa de toda la comunidad internacional. Por ello, mi delegación apoya todo mecanismo que favorezca una mayor cooperación internacional para reducir las asimetrías en la capacidad de implementar las reglas para un comportamiento responsable de los Estados y la adopción de medidas que fortalezcan la capacidad de las naciones para proteger sus infraestructuras críticas. Las normas existentes deben ser robustecidas tomando en cuenta el rápido desarrollo tecnológico. El Ecuador reafirma su compromiso con un ciberespacio seguro, abierto y pacífico, donde la tecnología pueda servir como una herramienta para el desarrollo. Es obligación de todos los estados fortalecer el multilateralismo para construir un entorno digital que respete la dignidad humana, promoviendo la paz y la seguridad internacionales. El derecho internacional y el derecho internacional humanitario aplican al ciberespacio. Concluyo recordando la necesidad de preservar y promover un uso responsable de las tecnologías de la información y la comunicación como clave
as
para
essential
garantizar la
to
estabilidad y
guarantee
seguridad en el
stability and
ciberespacio.
security in
Gracias, Presidente.
cyberspace. Thank you, President.
I thank the representative of Ecuador for their statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as a representative of the United Kingdom. I thank Dr. Ghebreyesus and Mr. Conrado for briefing us today. Earlier this year, in the General Assembly Open-Ended Working Group on Information Communication Technologies, all states recognised that ransomware attacks may have an impact on international peace and security. Ransomware actors have consistently attacked critical national infrastructure, local government, and hospitals for personal financial gain. Most groups exist in jurisdictions that allow them to operate with impunity. We call on these states to do more to tackle criminal gangs based in or making use of their territory. The UK, like many here today, continues to be a victim of ransomware incidents. Our National Health Service was affected by the WannaCry ransomware strain in 2017, which cost $118 million to recover from, money that could have been spent on saving lives. This year, a critical supplier to London's hospitals was affected by a ransomware incident which postponed over 10,000 health appointments and over 1,700 medical procedures. This disruption is replicated across our critical sectors. It is why the UK considers ransomware one of our most significant cyber threats to national security. To counter this, the UK is working to break the ransomware business and discourage victims from paying these criminals. Alongside international partners, the UK has issued 36 sanctions against actors involved in these types of activities. But we need a global response to this global threat. First, we urge others to join the UK government in not paying ransoms. In October, the UK and 49 other members of the Counter-Ransomware Initiative signed a public statement committing governments not to pay ransoms. Second, coordination will be our best defence. Recently, UK law enforcement led a coalition of global law enforcement agencies to disrupt the Lockbit ransomware group, the most prolific ransomware group of 2024. And third, we must increase resilience to these attacks by sharing information to illuminate the threats and build our collective understanding. We will continue to cooperate with international partners and industry to counter ransomware and dismantle the cybercriminal ecosystem. I now resume my function as President of the Council. And I give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Stavros Lambrinidis, Head of the Delegation of the European Union to the United Nations.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the honor to speak on behalf of the European Union and its member states. The candidate countries North Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, Albania, Ukraine, the Republic of Moldova, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Georgia align themselves with this statement. Mr. President, when hospitals, laboratories, and emergency services are paralyzed by ransomware, the impact extends beyond any single nation, placing patient lives at risk, destabilizing healthcare systems, and undermining trust in essential public services. Every 11 seconds, a ransomware attack takes place, a rate expected to escalate to an attack every 2 seconds by 2031. The global nature of ransomware and their potential impact on international peace and security demand that we respond collectively and decisively to prevent future harm. To prevent this threat, the European Union is taking strong action to protect critical infrastructure and essential services, including healthcare. We are boosting our defenses, increasing our responses, strengthening our international partnerships to address the rising number of ransomware. The EU's Network and Information Security Directive, adopted in December 2022, sets out cybersecurity risk management and incident reporting requirements for critical sectors across the EU and recognizes health as a sector of high criticality, quote unquote. This ensures cybersecurity requirements for health facilities. These measures are intended to safeguard our healthcare, secure sensitive medical data, and ensure that essential services remain operational despite cyber attacks. In other words, we recognize ransomware as a critical threat and reaffirm the urgency of this issue on the EU's political agenda. Now, in addition to prevention, we have also stepped up our responses to malicious cyber activities, in particular ransomware attacks. In June 24, the EU imposed restrictive measures on individuals linked to ransomware campaigns. In addition, in February 24, the EU Cybercrime Centre, together with international partners, launched an operation to dismantle the Lockbit ransomware group, one of the most prolific ransomware operators globally. We are taking action using all instruments at our disposal against those who deliberately disrupt critical services. We also strongly call upon all states, in line with the UN Framework for Responsible State Behavior, not to allow in their territory to be used for such malign activities and to respond to appropriate requests to mitigate such activities. Finally, Mr. President, we will continue to strengthen partnerships to address ransomware threats through EU capacity building initiatives, such as supporting the development of national cybersecurity strategies and improving crisis management. The establishment of a permanent UN mechanism, the UN Cyber Programme of Action, will allow us to advance a collective ability to counter threats against our societies and economies like ransomware. The European Union stands ready to continue to work with the global community as well as the private sector to protect critical infrastructure, especially healthcare, from cyber threats. Together, through a united and coordinated global approach, we can effectively combat the escalating threat of ransomware. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Lambrinidis for his statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.